Hello, my name is Fanni Somogyi, and I will be doing a short presentation about my work. I'm located in Studio 319, and I am the fall post-grad resident from October to the end of December. You can see a brief shot of my studio here. However, first, I will jump back in time to talk about my thesis exhibition and work my way chronologically to the current moment. I will discuss both processes and concepts behind my work, showing images and videos of me working. My work is multidisciplinary, ranging among different mediums and processes, and themes that often occur in my work are networking system, modes of connection, and acts of remembering. More specifically, inspired by the formal qualities of organic and inorganic networks, I investigate how humans relate to nature and one another. I received my BFA from the Maryland Institute College of Art in 2019, majoring in sculpture. This is a view of my thesis exhibition called Co-Located Current that I co-organized with Daisy Braun. Her works are hanging and my work are presented on the ground. The exhibition wall text read as follows, quote, "All around us there are currents. Power lines encircle the globe. Great fungal networks stretch out in the soil beneath our feet, while neural networks make up our minds. The ancient currents of the ocean make life possible. The world is an ongoing web where each part depends on all others. Currents of time overlap each other, and these material layers we find tangible traces of the past. As our place in time becomes multi-layered, we enter a space of fluidity. We are co-located within the current." End quote. My work consisted of cast forms and steel structures. These metal structures are in some sense pedestals, but to me they are also a non-functional part of the sculpture. I'm fascinated by slime mold, which is technically not a mold. It spreads out as it searches for food, and it can live freely as single cells, but can also form multicellular structures that act as one unit. It maps territory, knows itself, and moves with seeming intention. Slime mold embodies multiplicity. We could learn from slime mold. It is a singular being, but it is also part of a collective. And acting collectively and thinking about the collective more than the individual are necessary behaviors in creating a sustainable future, because we are all part of the same ecosystem. Spruce System's static flow of infonutrients is partially inspired by slime mold, but also my interest in networks and systems. It is one of the sculptures in Co-Located Current, and is an aluminum cast that incorporates spruce and ceramic shell, which are usually discarded after a metal pour. The myomorphic form resembles mushrooms, but is also structured as a network. Cicadas are visible at times within the system, and these bugs have an interesting relationship with trees, where they chew on their roots while being underground, and then after emerging, they live on the trees. They are also a metaphor for transformation, the core essence of lost wax metal casting. A fascinating fact about trees is that they are able to give each other nutrients and information through their fungal tree root web. A dense communication channel exists below our feet without us knowing. For example, a mother tree can send nutrients to one of its offsprings if it feels that they are in distress. One of the researchers that I like reading and watching videos of is Susan Simard, who has extensively studied birch trees. The combination of these ideas about relationships in biological networks and the system of metal casting are the core concepts of my cast sculptures. But a little more about the process. Metal casting starts off in the wax form. Here you can see the spruce system connecting cicadas to a pour cup where the metal will be poured in. You start with the positive to create a negative, which will hold the eventual positive. Usually you want the spruce to be minimal, so less has to be cut off later. However, I'm fascinated by them as channels or pathways. Then this object is dipped in ceramic shell and covered with sand, 8 times, each layer completely drying. When it dries to a yellow color, the layering and texture is fascinating, and it resembles slime mold and other fungi. This shell is also intriguing as a vessel. It holds an object and facilitates its creation. When it has cooled down and bits of the shell break, the layering is evident. I found this aspect very exciting because it also resembles tree rings and alludes to the time-intensive process. Metal casting is a process of care and transformation, and these are qualities that we should bring to our relationship with nature. Another work from co-located Current is Intangible Realities. This sculpture was also shown at Art Market Budapest in October 2020. The sculpture is an aluminum casting of a sleeping woman with her hair turning into the network that created her. The sprue systems are also kept, as well as the ceramic shell. The steel base that it rests on is almost bug-like or alien-like with its many legs. I'm drawn to the idea of dreaming alone, but also collective dreaming, and I would like to read a brief passage of a short story I wrote called Galambentinka, a disconnected multiplicity becoming whole again. In this story, slime mold has taken over humanity, lulling people to sleep and connecting them to one massive, interconnected dream. Quote, "Minds are forever embedded into the network, into Gaia. Not alive, but floating in a dew of ecstasy. Nothing moves or changes except the luminescent glow as the entity vibrated on. The flesh exists in constant dream, with nothing and everything. Consciousness passes through each connection, each body, becoming all and none simultaneously. The multiplicity is an entity in assemblage, a vast collection of beings and their myriads of thoughts." End quote. My writing usually influences my sculptural work, but it also happens vice versa. Moreover, for me, ideas of dreaming are also connected with speculation, an activity that I find captivating. Both of these processes allow you to imagine new possibilities for the future. Simultaneously, I'm drawn to nature reclaiming space and letting nature grow wild. In the process of reconnecting with nature, we also need to reevaluate our relationship with it. Our survival on this planet must be collaborative with other species, since we are part of the same system. My work is inspired by science fiction and science too. Research is often the preliminary part of the work. One author that I'm particularly drawn to is Ursula K. Le Guin. In her short story called Vaster Than Empire and More Slow, she imagines a world where a forest is sentient and can reflect back and radiate the feeling that people walking inside it have. The idea of an empathetic superorganism is exciting, and it reminds me partially of slime mold in some sense. I'm also drawn to films like Annihilation, which was based on the book by Jeff Vandermeer, where one of the central characters becomes a plant inside a lockdown zone that is exhibiting alien qualities. Recently, I wrote a poem called They Were the Meadow, They Were the Land, where I painted an image of a world where beings grew vegetables on their bodies. This playful thought process and speculation is important in urging people to imagine different futures, good or bad, and acting on these ideas now. The land is also our body to some extent, since if we poison it, then we are also putting toxins into our own physical bodies. These thoughts led to the creation of a new sculpture, which does not have a title yet. I have been calling it a chia head, but it is more than that. The idea began with some sketching and of growing things on our bodies and through our skin. I was interested in creating a sculpture where real plants would grow out of it. Thus, I started by sculpting a face from oil clay. I was using my own face as a reference, but the identity of the person is not specific. I wanted the face to resemble a woman, sort of an allusion to Gaia, who I see as an overarching mother figure. Her eyes are closed. She is dreaming. Now a bit more about the techniques and processes behind making it. The next step was creating a silicone mold so I could pour a hollow cast. I don't have a video of me creating the silicone for it, but I have a short clip of me making a mold for a hand sculpture that had sculpted mushrooms growing out of it. The silicone is 2-part mixed in a 1-to-1 ratio that is brushed onto the work in multiple layers. After I made the silicone mold and added a 2-part mother mold made of plastic paste, it was time to pour the plastic, which I was thrilled about. The first cast came out okay, but it ended up being a test piece and I made several other hollow castings. The base that the head sits on is plasma cut from 1/8-inch thick steel. After cleaning the edges and welding the form together, I also powder coated it, which is basically a process where you spray paint powder onto your object and bake it at 400 degrees. The face has holes, so the microgreens that will be growing inside it can also grow through it. I planted mustard, broccoli, and radish seeds into the containers that I'm still growing separately as I'm editing this video. This will seem very obvious, but it is wild and fascinating how fast seeds are activated by water. One of my sprouts grew an inch in a day after it had sprouted. This growth just shows the power of nature. The metal juxtaposes to the natural elements of the work, and this quality is also present in other work such as Becoming Still. This sculpture is also constructed from 1/8" steel that I plasma cut and welded. Becoming Still is a dystopian-looking object functioning as a memory box of Earth. Speculative in its nature, it is constructed for a time where nature is no longer pristine and is not readily available. The sculpture is built from steel and holds an LCD screen with video footage of the Patapsco River's smaller branches and the surrounding trees. The landscape is calm and humanless, which contrasts with the context of the hypothetical viewer who is missing nature. At the top of the sculpture is a small planter box housing aromatic basil. The work offers a fragment of nature in the hopes of inducing the viewer to seek out more. During my residency, walks in the forest were a crucial part of my research. I enjoy being outside, and it feels important to listen to trees. It has a soothing effect on the soul. Mossbox, which actual title is Transplanting Home Elsewhere, was born out of these walks near and by the Patapsco River. At this time, some walks were focused on capturing new footage for Becoming Still, but some were unstructured walks, almost like derives. A derive is a concept that the situation has coined. It is meant more for cities where you walk and explore without a destination and are led by sight, smells, and things that strike your attention. But I also used it in the forest. During these walks, I tended to navigate towards mushrooms and mosses. I love the softness of moss, and it feels like a plush carpet under my bare feet. After one particular walk, I wrote a poem about collecting moss and how it is part of a home that we have left. I was further thinking about how the forest is a place of respite. We have become increasingly disconnected from nature. However, touch can remedy this because it is a form of intimacy. Therefore, I had the idea to create a moss box where a piece of the forest is transplanted into one's home, or in this case, the gallery. This sculpture is also meant to function as a dystopian object, similar to Becoming Still. And I hope that the viewer will want to seek out more after their interaction with it. Metal contrasts with the more organic materials, such as plants, included in my work. However, this juxtaposition is crucial in thinking about possible sustainable futures. Additionally, questions of our ever-evolving relationship with nature and the role of technology in salvaging our environment continues to motivate my art. I would like to conclude with a quote from Ursula K. Le Guin's short story mentioned earlier. Quote, "We all have forests in our minds, forests unexplored, unending. Each of us gets lost in the forest every night, alone." End quote. Thank you.